Hello, my name is Malaya, and I am sharing with you my story. It's June 20th, 2021, and yesterday was Juneteenth, Day of Liberation. And so this is definitely a liberation story for me because I'm taking the next step to what I've applied basically throughout a period of time from when I received some certifications in quantum recovery coaching, quantum success coaching, recovery coaching, and the wraparound training. So I've been involved with the mental health field, and on top of that, raised three children basically in mental health because of my story, and have never really felt comfortable about sharing it because of its complexities. And now I am realizing that my story is actually my liberation, telling my story and sharing it, and sharing the tools that I learned along this journey is actually the liberation that I've been searching for, seeking for, and it's been right in front of me the whole time. So I was born to a white woman. Hi. I was born to a white woman and adopted by a Native American woman. And let's see here. I'm going to pop this back out. The ladies on the top, on the left and the right, are my mother and my grandmother that adopted me, and the ladies on the bottom are the mother and the grandmother that uh that I was born to. And then this is me in the middle. And in my home, the reason why I'm telling this story on this day is because in my home that I grew up in, I it was never okay to be any kind of race. So there were always racial slurs about Native Americans, Indians, dirty Indian, we got niggers, and we got black people, like you're acting white. I always got told that I acted white, and I got made fun of a lot. And I didn't know I was even adopted until my late 20s. And so I had relatives that knew I was adopted and utilized it to shame me. I don't think that they meant to shame me. However, the person that my mother turned out to be because of her abuse, I ended up being targeted for a lot of her actions in terms of that story, and she was never clear or transparent to me about what that about my me being adopted. And so I was very confused throughout my whole life, didn't know it, endured it, and always for some reason thought I was really a lucky person. Anyway, despite it all, until my adulthood. And we get into the self-centered fear aspect. In my adulthood, I started seeking when I found out I was adopted. I I saw when I went to college for social work. I Everything was designed in my life around trying to fix myself because of this story, and because I thought something was wrong with me because of the abuse that I incurred. I was abused physically, emotionally, mentally, and sexually, and it all I and it was a very I was never neglected, so I never really knew that the things that I was putting up with was a problem. I always thought I was the problem. So, self centered fear, I'm going to read off these off because I think it's kind of important that we understand the differences between self centeredness, selfishness, and self centered fear, which if you're a human being, you're going to experience these one way or another at one time or another. And I shamed myself severely for being selfish, or when I found that there were actions that I was taking that were selfish or self centered, I really did not like myself and would turn that against me. And then when we do this, it brings out either internal feelings or actions and behaviors that really keep us away from experiencing life at its fullest. So, selfishness, a person, action, or motive lacking consideration for others and or is concerned only with one's own personal profit or pleasure. Self-centered is being preoccupied with oneself and one's affairs. And self-centered fear is dictate anxiety and fear-based perceptions dictate decision making and how one spends their energy. Usually, unhealthy coping mechanisms are dominant, and one may need support and accountability to overcome fear based decision making. And this ranges around now we have the internet. I found myself replacing my relationships with the internet and was really excited that we actually kind of got a free education with it. But I actually was utilizing the learning on there and the knowledge on there as a way to replace real life relationships and community. And I found myself in a pretty lonely, like deeply lonely space inside. And I also felt like I could not relate to others. Self centered fear impacts a person's relationships and success in life. The behaviors that may reflect when a person is in this is aggression, stagnation due to entertaining worry in the mind, sadness, and depression. This state of mind creates a suffering that separates individuals from other people and desires and perspectives and usually has no resolution or solution to the problems. And this is that's the state that I feel like our country is in after COVID. Also, just right here in Montana, we are in a mental health crisis right now. And it is due to people feeling like we cannot connect because we are labeling each other, we are battling gentrification, we're labeling, like we got the culture stuff going on and the race stuff with George Floyd. We have all these things coming up to the surface for us to, which we do need to know what's going on and what's really going on. However, I feel like a lot of media based content is being ingested through this lens of self centered fear where a person needs to take a side or needs to fight for the rights. And this, like especially for those folks that don't have a lot of diversity in their towns in their space, this could be very detrimental for a person. This kind of knowledge and not knowing how to overcome it or to apply solutions to it could be a space that could really like lead a person to death. So back to my mother's. I had my both women died of cancer. They didn't have tools to to resolve their internal battle. And what I've learned from knowing both of these women and seeing them on their journey is that generational trauma really doesn't know culture, gender, or race. Both of these women died of the same thing due to basically the same thing happening to them, but in a different context. My mother, that I was born to, that was white, she actually died of cancer and she was molested by her mom or by her father. And my mother that raised me was molested, of course, in the boarding schools, but there was also a lot of sexual abuse happening on our reservations. So this is the point of having my story done, being told on this day, is because I feel like I get the liberation to even tell this story because of, when I dropped, it was when I dropped the seeking, when I sunk deep into my addiction, I applied my tools within that space and was able to resolve this eventually. Yes, it could have been done faster if, like if I would have gotten help. However, the point is that I feel like, well-being tools and well-being tools and is, like is important no matter where you're at and what you're doing, moving your body, moving out the trauma, especially if you're being exposed to trauma every day. It's important to know that these tools actually do work. Visualization techniques, uh, setting good intentions for yourself, all this stuff. Yes, I was still in a rut with it when I sunk into it. However, I'm able to speak to you today and had gotten hit with the baggage of my lineages, and I'm still able to be here and present and be coherent and have another day to live and breathe and create solution. So this is one of the lady in the middle is one of the ladies that my mom, a picture of one of the ladies that my birth mom gave me, and it's, she looks pretty ragged, rugged, torn, and then on the left there is of course some women that I don't know, but I collaged this, and if you notice in the bottom right is me as a child, and then I put myself there as a baby again. And then the upper left is me and my daughter when she was born. But I put all these together because I realize that like these are the people that I would make fun of. I would label, hillbilly, backwoods, and because I didn't have any association to them due to the labels that I was taught to use to describe them. So, and like this, and it may seem innocent and it may seem funny. However, I realized my body actually was internalizing the things that I was saying, and this actually, and I actually felt a lot of shame and guilt for just existing because of this and because of this finding this background out, and like, and then being adopted to a woman who had a very tumultuous background as well was, it was pretty devastating to me to have to finally begin to feel the generational trauma. The reality of people dealing with these traumas is that we're dealing with them, and then we perpetuate it by making fun of them, labeling it, not dealing with that at all, addiction issues, or succumbing to somebody else's will for your life because you don't know how to make decisions for yourself. And I've been through, like experiences of all of this, and it's not fun. And I didn't understand that it was due to the judgment of myself and my background, and I would usually judge, myself and where I came from before you could judge me because my pain body just couldn't handle it, and at least that's what I thought. And that is, like, and that's what kind of keeps folks from actually experiencing relationships, which most people thrive on relationships. If you notice places of addiction, places of culture, it's all about relationships. And so when one starts to internalize the guilt and shame and they can't project it, there's a tendency that the person takes it onto themselves, internalizes the emotions of the others around them, and then, usually there's medication, some kind of medication, or suicidal ideation that occurs with this. And in the little writing, I looked up the definition of authenticity because I've always wanted to live authentically. It's easier for me. I am a little, I like life easy. And so authenticity is important to me. However, I did not realize I was not living authentic. Anyway, authenticity is living your life according to your own values and goals rather than those of other people. And you're true to your own values and spirit, regardless of the pressure that you're under to act otherwise. And what I found with having this kind of background and, a continuous searching for the right answer on how to fix myself, these go to the wayside. And I don't even, it's a journey to even know what it is that I like or who I am or what my values are. And I've met a lot of people who don't know that either and would, and is okay with living in total confusion of who they really are as a whole. So, to the seeking part, these are some of the things that I am asking myself now when I ingest knowledge, because this is what I found myself and others around me doing is that we receive knowledge, we have all this free information now available to us. However, I found myself receiving it, regurgitating it, not really finding the time due to, working, working and trying to make a living or using all of my time to try to figure this knowledge out and apply it to myself. And coming back to the self centered fear, it was all about overpowering somebody else so that I did not have to feel unsafe. And when I realized this, I did go into a deep depression because very highly self-centered I was. I didn't want to inflict anything on others. However, in going into this deep victim consciousness, I found that I was a liability to others. So here's some questions that I generated from this, and these are the questions that I now ask myself. How am I receiving this information? It's good to always check in and be aware of what you're ingesting anyway, because sometimes we just do these things blindly. And we end up, like not getting very far and not really even getting to know ourselves that well because of the things that we're learning rather than the things that we're being. Am I the exception to the application because I have the knowledge or that I can comprehend the knowledge really well? Sometimes this gives a superiority complex. And these are all things that keep us from actually really connecting with each other. And when we connect with each other, we thrive. And it gives us space, it makes us feel safe enough to create. And what are ways I can reflect my experiences creatively? I found now that I'm starting. This is one of my first step, actually, my second step, because I've done some creative things, but this is a big step for me to reflect everything that I've learned in my life in somewhat of a creative manner with the speaking and the PowerPoint and the video. And then I have the little duct tape on there, and it's bumpy because I was always ashamed because I was pretty bumbly due to just really not knowing who I was and knowing what I wanted and not really knowing what my needs are. and trying to fit into a mold of, like meeting my needs is going to the spa or going to the beach. Well, I I found, well, also hygiene is another way of meeting my needs. And creating is really important to me, and I'm realizing that more and more and more. And being the change I want to see is highly important to me. And it's just not, it's gotten to the point where I just can't ignore being that change. It's no longer enticing to me to get into a group and discuss things and not have a solution. So this is another thing too that I learned that is pretty self-destructive, and I know it may be like that deal where people are like, well, like it's just it's too much, or like let's see, it's too I'm being too overly critical about this action, but when we are sitting around ingesting content and then repeating it, and that's all we're doing, and then going to work and going to bed, and then then we end up in an eddy or a cycle where it feels like things will never change, or that it's up to somebody else to change, then it doesn't create change. And news is only news that perpetuates the story if it is only talked about. So I'm presenting learning strategies as well that encompass application of the mind, body, energy, knowledge, and getting support and applying it to unique circumstances, which enhances individuals to thrive. I feel like when we start getting together and supporting each other and uplifting each other with the new knowledge of how we take care of ourselves and self actualize, then we have the ability to actually enjoy each other rather than sit with each other. And, like now, I mean, like there's a lot of people that are separating due to this behavior because some folks really do want to do something different, and it's hard for them to be in a space with somebody who is in fear due to something that they heard on the news, and that's what they want to spend their qualitative time with that person. And if you are doing this, I highly suggest take at least 5 minutes out of the time you are meeting with somebody and and admire them. Admire why you're with them. At least be aware of why you're with them. What is it about your friendship that makes you want to show up? And what is it about them that that you actually enjoy? And when we start shifting our mindset to doing these kinds of things, we counteract especially the false news that really does create separation and division amongst human beings. So I share my personal experience because of the uniqueness and its relevancy to the topics debated now. And I want to share with you what I've learned on my journey, and which wasn't easy. And I get to talk about it today, which is liberation. I feel very liberated, having the ability to tell it in exactly the words that I tell it, and not having to worry about not giving a shit about what anybody thinks of it, but putting it out there because somebody might benefit from it. And my takeaway from my life story is that cancer knows no color, or culture. Generational trauma knows no culture, or knows no color or race, or culture. And that shame is the underlying issue of why people are dying from these things. Shame, carrying shame, not having the ability to work through it, not having the ability to work it out of the body, is what causes these diseases. And now neuropathy is becoming a big deal. And a lot of it has to do, my neuropathy, I started getting neuropathy symptoms. And it started going away by doing, somatic yoga and Feldenkrais, but also it's really resolving because I am going into the story and resolving. Your body's basically the book that's holding the story. And so when we ignore what's going on with the body, or when we ignore the story, or we try to suppress the traumas that we experience, you're basically holding that book underwater. And so it's just it's keeping the book closed, and then it just builds and builds and builds. It's like a pressure valve. The generational trauma is not our fault. However, it is our responsibility to navigate it in a way that creates sustainable change. It really is individual responsibility. And how we do that is because I feel like I've gotten really overwhelmed knowing that it's time for me to take accountability and overcome victim consciousness. However, what I've realized with this, not everybody is going to have a big job in creating sustainable changes. Some folks may have a job of just telling their story and how they get through day to day, because believe me, if you're going through it, somebody else probably is. And we have a sea of information now with the internet and television that keeps us from knowing that somebody that from connecting that to that other person that may need the information that you have. I'm saying, like, it's not all negative with the internet. The internet also can be an avenue where you connect and just tell your story and start telling your story, in a way where you learn how to live with it. Could help somebody in another country. So downplaying experiences and knowledge bombing are not sustainable skills, and good sounding talk only wastes our time and creates more division. I am really ready to do something different than this, and I'm guilty of it 100%. However, I recognize that I don't, like, not much gets done, and we fall into the same trap of the systems that are already in place when we view view complaining about these things, or like I said, knowledge bombing each other with these things in our social settings. So some of the solutions that I am developing and moving into is getting to know my chakras. I started out with psychic skills and visualization, but I realized that really just does keep me in my head more. And I feel like learning about the chakras first gets a person in their body, gets you doing yoga, and gets some of that trauma moved out. Someone to talk to is important. As like I said, I substituted relationships with the internet, and like in learning, I was addicted to learning. Energetic field anatomy and knowledge. We have an auric field. We have a whole anatomy, another anatomy about a human being, and we were not taught this. And anybody can learn this. You do not have to be super smart or spiritual to know that something a part of your body is you, and you probably should learn about it, just like we learn that we have genitals and how to care for those. We should learn about our energetic fields. One of the things that I found is of like figuring out. I know there's like validation groups online on Facebook and stuff now, but A validation group that deters you from getting validation from others through your trauma, or through the trauma that you have experienced or that you're experiencing now. Because when we are going through something, we can't sit through it, or we are used to getting attention in these ways, and most of us are used to getting our needs met through being hurt. It only keeps the cycle perpetuating. Somatic movement, like I mentioned, the yoga is really it's really important, and it's low impact as well. And if you can, like, raise get your heart rate raised by running or jogging or dancing, that also is a very powerful tool to release the trauma. And so, before become aware of consumption activities. Become aware of what I mean, like, if you are experiencing trauma, this is what I've noticed in my culture and in my, like, with my friends and family and myself, is because you are used to, or like you're used to the exposure of highly violent or, like, negative content. Like, it's very entertaining to watch this stuff. However, if you are dealing with a trigger or trauma, these things do trigger your body's response to it. And if you're just sitting there ingesting traumatic events over and over and over again and not releasing it, it can become a problem. Um, so what I did is I started writing down my consumption a day, my media consumption, my food consumption, alcohol, drug, tobacco consumption. I just started writing it all down, the way that I was doing it, and I got a picture of what I was actually doing. And in this way, when you do this, you become your own coach. You can't argue with yourself, and you actually are accountable to what you are doing at this, and that was for me, because I was so defensive. And a lot of times, like, dealing with cultural or racial things, I do have a tendency to be highly defensive, and can and will use my story against you. And it actually does feel like you are saying things to me to be against me. So this is one of the ways that I counteracted that, because I really do want a life outside of, being trauma malaya that can't get her shit together. And, you know, when people are supported in reaching their highest potential, I feel like we just haven't figured out how to yet. More people prosper in those highest potential probabilities. And the better it gets, the better it gets. Like, if you can uplift a person, that's homeless, they become a part of the marketplace and a way of having the ability to share and exchange. And we have more options, more creativity. Life is abundant when we uplift each other rather than hold some people down in order to have more or feel better. And again, all these behaviors come from the self-centered fear, which, when we start learning about this stuff and really start learning about how our bodies really operate and the extra anatomy that we have, it's a lot. And learn how to have fun with having that awareness, because a lot of times it's a chore due to it being, like, having to do it because you're working or you're doing something else. But really, body awareness can be fun, and it should be incorporated into your everyday life. Like, energetic hygiene should be like taking a shower as well. And it can be done while you're taking a shower. So I am in the process of creating quantum self-awareness tools as well. Those should be coming out in about a month or two, maybe three. It's a template guide to creating a voice and discernment that is unique to you. Because knowledge is power when it is applied. And that's what I found. I get, I step in all these holes because I don't apply the stuff, or it sounds good in the moment, or I get jazzed up in the moment. But when it comes to real life, how are we really going to, really put this together? How are we really going to apply it to where we are actually thriving and accomplishing those goals that we want to accomplish? Because we're coming into a time where you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to get things done, but you do have to take the action, and that could be easier said than done when, like you are self-conscious. So the content that I am in the works of and applying to myself in the moment with a very real scenario that's going on. It's real time. I'm the guinea pig. If is doing this chakra and etheric body knowledge and balancing and learning how it relates to my physical anatomy. Activity consumption journal and discernment development. Creativity, my creativity power is getting better and better. Developing the creativity starting with the body and doing it. The somatic movement for body reset, flexibility, strength, and meditation. Visualization methods are key and are utilized from start to finish. And co-creative learning as it belongs to no one. This is how I'm getting through my money blocks and asking for money for what I do create, because I know I honestly just want to give this stuff away for free. And I know the more that I get into my wholeness, I'll have the ability to do that. But for now, I do need, like I frame this in my mind, at least, like pricing with an open heart is, like funds for living expenses and space and time to continue to create and facilitate. And I feel like when one is able to open themselves up, I don't think we need to ask for thousands of dollars, but I do believe that people need to be compensated for the time and energy that they put into assisting another person's life. So these are all the things that roll around in my head right now, and it's getting stronger and stronger, and I am taking the steps towards this and presenting it. And I'm presenting this video today. This stuff isn't really done yet or ready to be, in a Zoom call or wherever you do these, or be recorded or inviting people. However, I wanted to do it today because I know there's people out there where this information will trigger you into your own action. And there's a lot of people who have pieces of nuggets of knowledge that you might not even know that you have, that you could put something together for yourself, not only for yourself, but also to create a way of making a living that is fulfilling and alive. And so I'm tired of dying, and I realized I was dying because I wasn't owning all of myself. I definitely grew up in an era where it was okay to just leave that at the door. I mean, like we used to have a phrase, like tuck that shit in. Tuck that shit in, like keep going, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But I really do find that, like it is possible for those who can't do that or who are experiencing some severe obstacles to actually have the ability to learn and grow and then share that with others and then maybe move on to something else. But it's all about getting into your creativity and getting into having the ability to share and be open and create and be adventurous with life no matter where you're at. So that I did it. I did it. Here it is. And I hope it fits on somewhere because I'm going to post it just like this. Thank you. Happy solstice.